Hey everyone, it's Bennett, your fantasy football commissioner, with the Week 9 weekly recap for the ForrestLand MishMash Fantasy Football League 2014. Um, Interesting week with a lot of teams on byes this week. As usual, not too many super close games, although a couple did come down to the Monday night game. So let's start there with the real slim Aussies trying to make something out of the season, stay out of the cellar, and possibly keep their slim slim playoff hopes alive against the Somerset Stallions, who have scored a lot of points this year, but for some reason we're only 4-4 coming into the week. Um, a close game where the Slim Aussies, this is interesting, both starting quarterbacks were on a bye. And not that Matt Ryan and Jay Cutler are having spectacular years, but they're definitely my starters. So, quick backstory is in anticipation of this, I picked up David Carr earlier in the year. Then earlier in the week, or a week before, I picked up Mike Glennon and was all set to have them fill in with moderate hopes for their success. Then on Saturday, I found out that Brandon Weeden might play for the Cowboys. So I was going to pick him up, but I hesitated because you're only allowed to have 4 quarterbacks on your roster, and I didn't have anyone else I was comfortable dropping. So I figured I'd wait till Sunday morning to see if he was officially going to play. By that time, Sunday morning, when it rolled around and I found out that Romo was out, the ruthless Ray Finkel's Kicking Academy had picked them up. And when we look at the Ray Finkel's roster, we see that there was really no strategic reason to pick up Brandon Weeden, a fill-in for an injured quarterback, when you have Peyton Manning, the best quarterback in the league, and Ben Roethlisberger coming off a 6-touchdown game, and I believe, no one really on the bench. So basically, it was a ruthless, albeit very savvy and strategic move to pick up a backup quarterback, really just to prevent anyone else from getting him. So that sort of put a bad taste in my mouth on Sunday. The irony is that both my quarterbacks, including Derek Carr at Seattle, got more points than Brandon Weeden. So it really didn't affect the game. Actually, it would have been worse had I gotten Weeden. But it just shows that, a good fantasy football owner is always thinking ahead. And as ruthless as a move it was, I have to give Ray Finkel credit for thinking ahead. So, good move there. And, obviously it affected the Slim Aussies, who really, have had just a struggle this year. As you can see, Andre Johnson and Steve Smith have been disappointments. Andre Johnson had one good week. Steve Smith had one good week against Carolina earlier in the year, and really has petered off since. Hasn't had a touchdown since really the Tampa Bay game. So he sort of peaked early. He may be wearing out. Andre Johnson's been a super disappointment, and Kelvin Benjamin dropped a touchdown against the Saints, I believe, Sunday night. That being said, it still came down to the Monday night game with Andre Williams and Larry Donnell for the Slim Aussies. No one for the Stallions. It was just a matter of seeing if the Giant offense could do anything. And basically did nothing for the first 3 quarters. Did get some garbage points towards the end, but at the end it wasn't enough. A 4-point loss for the Slim Aussies. Somerset Stallions, who have scored tons of points this year, only with 113, but they squeak out the victory. And check out this amazing stat. You had Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, 2 of the top quarterbacks in the league, combining for 15 points, and Derek Carr and Mike Glennon, 2 no-name guys, getting 30 points total. Pretty amazing, yet wasn't enough for the Slim Aussies. They fall to 2-7. Somerset Stallions are 5-4, and they're atop the Mish division, along with the Chicago Travelers, who go above 500 with a 141-119 win over the Cartel, and the Cartel fall under 500. So as you can see, streaking in the wrong direction. Same records, but the Cartel have lost 3 in a row. The Travelers have won 3 in a row. Respectable 141 points. No one really on a bye for the Travelers. Just not a lot of scoring from Kaepernick. Cordero Patterson's been a disappointment. And really, Jeremy Macklin's been carrying the team the last couple weeks. As you can see here, he's had 2 stellar weeks in a row. 2 touchdowns each week, over 150 yards both weeks. Of course, Arizona had 12 catches, which is pretty amazing. So that gets him the win. Garbage point time for Eli Manning against the Colts Monday night wasn't quite enough. Really needed a blowout game or blow-up game for Eli Manning to overcome Eddie Royal's 0. Of course, that goes hand in hand with Phillip Rivers' -3. And just not quite enough points for the Cartel. They did have Forte, Alshon Jeffrey, and on byes, so that didn't help either. So the Travelers are a tie for first place record-wise, trailing only the tiebreaker to the Stallions. We'll take a look at the standings in just a minute. Have to mention the high score of the week, the Calvinators, and I was giving Greg crap earlier in the year for having, mainly for the homer pick of this guy, Tim Wright, who's basically had one good week all year. If you look at his stats, he's had 2 weeks where he had a touchdown and more than 50 yards, but pretty much nothing the rest of the year. But in spite of that, has scored tons of points the last couple weeks, especially with Arian Foster, who's definitely, I think he's got to be the comeback fantasy player of the year. Andrew Luck's just been steady all year. And then Edelman, another homer pick, but yet he's doing really well. Emmanuel Sanders for Denver has really picked it up. So a lot of points, and the Calvinators are 4-4-1, and they've won 2 in a row. Be More BP also having a little bit of a tough luck year. Did start Michael Vick with Stafford and all these people on byes. Got 13 respectable points, 32 from Tom Brady. Just not enough other points. Definitely hurt by the bye and Calvin Johnson's injury. Not helping Be More BPE. They fall to 3-6, and the Calvinators again 4-4-1, well in the playoff hunt. We have, of course, Ray Finkel almost getting the most points with coming in second, but yet still 9-0. Just been really steady, tons of points all year. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger's been manly all year, and Brandon Weeden, like I mentioned, on the bench only had 8 points. And 2 really good players on byes, Brandon Marshall and Randall Cobb, yet still 187 points. Mark Ingram's been amazing the last couple of weeks. He's done nothing for 3 years, and all of a sudden, in the last 2 weeks, he's gotten over 100 yards in multiple touchdowns. So it's amazing. All of a sudden, he turns it on, and Ray Finkel's benefiting. Graceland also having a tough year, just like the Slimazis, just can't quite get it together. Nick Foles got hurt. Robert Griffin did come back with 15 points, but just too many, just not enough points coming along. A couple decent scoring outbursts, but nothing special for Graceland. They do fall to 2-7 with their 4th loss in a row. They're tied with the Slimazis for last place in the Mish division. Finally, we have Third and Oolong, who's really been coming along. A couple of nice wins. I think is on a 4-game winning streak. They're 6-3, second in the division. They're in really good shape for a wild card spot. Chiomes has been up and down all year, thus the 4-4-1 record. Decent amount of points, 127. Obviously, the San Diego kicker gets 0 for the shutout. A couple other nice points. Cam Newton's been up and down. That obviously explains a lot. It doesn't help Giovanni Bernard's hurt. And I believe... Nope. Oh, yeah, there we go. Oh, Carson Palmer on the bench. Interesting move having Carson Palmer on the bench and starting Ryan Tannehill. Of course, the obvious move would have been to have Newton and Palmer starting. So interesting choice to sit Palmer, but it doesn't really matter because either way they lost by 50 points. And Third and Oolong's really stepped it up in spite of having Aaron Rodgers on a bye and pretty mediocre quarterbacks aside from that. Antonio Brown's been amazing. He's one of those guys you just don't really notice until all of a sudden you look and he's got at least 5 catches every week, just like last year, except this year he's scoring more touchdowns and more total yards. So Antonio Brown definitely becoming one of the elite. receivers in the game. And of course, Gronk has been amazing, 26 points. He had 42 the week before. Pretty steady all year, but last 2 weeks is really starting to show, being the Gronk of old. So third and Oolong's looking real good. Chioms still in it, but yet struggling to get any consistency. So that's all the games for the week. Let's take a look at the standings. Now it's getting interesting. As you can see, we only have 5 weeks of the regular season left. Still a lot of time. Let's blow this up a little bit. We have the Stallions and the Travelers, like I mentioned, tied for first, with the Stallions getting the tiebreaker in points. Cartel still hanging tough at 4 and 5, and of course the Slim Aussies and Graceland really just having tough years. If you look at the points for, pretty commensurate with the standings, as you can see, right in line. So that's no one's having too much bad luck there. And then, of course, Ray Finkel's Kicking Academy, easily the most points. The only one that's cracked 1,400 points, and not only that, has over 1,500 points. So Ray Finkel definitely is the leader there. And then we have third and Oolong, again, picking it up lately, so not necessarily in total points for the season, but yet having a real strong sort of middle of the season. And then Calvinators and Chioms still in there. So if we look at the playoffs, with 5 games left, the Calvinators and Chioms, even more BP, still well in the hunt. I guess technically the Aussies and Graceland are in the hunt as well. 3 games out of the second and third wild card, or I always say that, the 2 wild card teams. So still pretty much, like I said, a lot of season left to play, 5 weeks, but it is getting down. Ray Finkel's in great shape, and still a lot of season to play. So hope you enjoyed the recap this week, and get your money in if you haven't already. Get your Thursday night players in, and watch out for those buys.